In this episode, I just want to show you a technique, I suppose, or a way of framing something that will do two things which are beneficial. It will, first of all, increase your options. And secondly, it will reduce your stress. And it won't show up in all situations where you can use this. It's a particular, but quite regular phenomenon, really, that we'll face, where we'll think of a situation in such a way that it actually reduces our options to one, in fact, which isn't a lot of options. And because it reduces our options to one, it actually gives us a great deal of stress, because then we've got to make sure it's the right one. And that's the thing that feels stressful. And so when we're choosing things, whether it's, something that we're shopping for, or it might be, a recruitment candidate, or, whatever it happens to be, what we'll often ask ourselves is a question, well, what's best? All these different options here, what's best? And then that gets really stressful, because if you've got 10 options before you, you have to make sure that you pick the best one. I don't know whether you've felt this. I've certainly felt this. You might decide that you need something, and so you might go online to shop for it. And then you just suddenly realise that while you just wanted this thing, and when you first wanted it, I felt fine. Now you're there and you're faced with about 12 different choices. It's like, oh no, this now feels stressful. I've got to pick the right one. I've got to pick the best one. And so when we ask ourselves what's best, it really does get stressful. I don't know, it might just be a kettle that you're after. I know certainly I've done this. You go online, you think, I'll buy a kettle. But then there's all these different models and they all do different things. And suddenly now you're fretting about things that you didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago. But you need to pick the kettle that's best. But do we really need to pick the kettle that's best? That's where all the stress comes from. Or is there another way? And the other way is we can have a different standard. Instead of what's best, we can ask what's good enough, what will do the job. If it's a kettle, for instance, what's going to boil the water for us? If it's a toaster, what's going to toast our bread? Whatever it is in life, really. When you ask the question, what will do the job? What's going to be good enough to do the job? It ceases to be so stressful, because you don't have to pick the very best one. There's no fear of missing out. That actually, did I pick the right one? Did I pick the best one? Was that other one better than this one? Oh, the anxiety. When we ask ourselves what's good enough for the job here, what will be good enough, then that opens up a whole host of opportunities, doesn't it? Because there's going to be plenty of things that meet that standard. And then, as long as they're meeting that standard of what's good enough to do the job, then it's a big tick, isn't it? It's ticking that box. It doesn't have to be the best one, because we didn't come into it trying to choose the best one when we're making a choice. We had something in mind that we wanted to achieve, and does this thing actually achieve it? And of course, this applies to our own work as well. Sometimes we can put ourselves under great stress because we're trying to make something the best it could possibly be, when in actual fact, what we really needed is to make it good enough for the job. And so once we start changing the question from what's best to what will do the job, it releases a whole load of stress and tension, while at the same time increasing the amount of options available to you. And so I wonder where that would show up in life. And, this isn't necessarily some major psychological thing. It's just a way of looking at things. It's just a way, seeing as we can do it quite easily, of taking some of the stress out of some of the more mundane sort of questions in life. But of course, maybe they're not mundane all the time. Maybe this what's best is something that is quite a big decision. It's not just about buying a kettle or a toaster. But it might be something to do with our work. It might be something important. But when we move away from, well, what's the best one? What's the best approach? What's the best decision? It releases us from having to find the one thing out of the multitude that is absolutely the best. And if we simply ask, what will do the job here? We came in here with some sort of criteria where we're thinking, right, okay, I need one of those, or I need to do that, or I need to pick this because I've got this particular thing to accomplish. And if it accomplishes that thing, does it really matter which one's the best? And so by asking that question, it just opens up a lot of possibilities, and it makes the choice a lot easier because we're not having to pick the top one. We're not having to go for perfectionism. We can let that go and simply ask instead, what will do the job? And in that letting go, there's a huge release and letting go of the stress that goes with trying to find the right one, the perfect one. And so have a look where that shows up in life. Check out where you're thinking, well, which one's the best one? And ask yourself, is that the most helpful question in that moment? Maybe the right question would be, what will do the job? And see what difference that makes as you make that switch from what's best to what's good enough. And if you like this idea, please spread it around. You can subscribe to the podcast for free. You can see them as videos on asliceoftherapy.com. And you could work with me directly if you'd like to. I'm Alan Parry at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.